Here we are. Scott, how you doing?
I'm always good, brother. How you doing?
I'm good, but I'm wondering, where are you, man?
You see the roses up here above my head? I'm in the city of Roses, Portland, Oregon. I had a
Oh,
really exciting day yesterday. Let's check this out. So I get a call late at night on Monday, and President Biden's coming to Portland. I think it was public knowledge, and he's going to tour infrastructure, and he's going to, meet with the governors. Going to, and
sorry, Scott. I just had a glitch there. So you're saying that you are in Portland and President Biden is coming there?
He's there. He was here yesterday. So all around him was all these kind of think tank work groups, the infrastructure bill, all that. And so I had the opportunity. This is so cool. I had the opportunity to lead a roundtable discussion of CEOs and C-suite executives around infrastructure initiatives for the West Coast. The highways that connect, the bridges that connect, the waterways that connect, and they needed facilitators in the room. And I got invited to be a facilitator. Man, it was so cool. It was so cool. Everyone keeps asking me, did you get to meet the president? No, I didn't get to meet the president. I was looking, though. I really was, brother, but I didn't get that opportunity.
Oh, that sounds amazing, though. So those sudden phone calls to you, this is something that we've experienced before, where you get a phone call and there's a place that needs these types of conversations facilitated, or there's the other phone calls where all of a sudden a leader of a company is unable to perform. I remember last time that we were suddenly in a different location and you were like, yeah, there's somebody that needs me to step in as the CEO of the company for a certain amount of time. And it's very interesting experience you have there. And I appreciate that you're still able to get together with us today.
Oh, well, I look forward to this. You know that. This is my favorite thing I do all week, brother.
You betcha, me too. And so let's get into it because we've got a really exciting guest here this week. As always, I'm here with Scott Connors, the Chief Change Officer at Crankset Group, facilitating leadership conversations wherever they may be. And myself, I am the Marketing Strategist at Gravidia. And today we are hosting Leadership Line of Sight like we do each week. And we bring forward Angeie Zuber. Angie is a teacher, but man, a teacher maybe like no other. It was really interesting to see the challenges that people were talking about during COVID. And even more so, some of the things that said that they prevented them or disabled them. And Angie has done amazing things in her classroom, has definitely gone beyond the walls of the classroom. And during the pandemic, she actually even arranged funding because they couldn't touch the library books. I'm just excited to have her in here. Let's get Angie in. Welcome, Angie. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing really good.
How's Portland?
Good. Sunny.
That's great. So Angie, you teach grades 1 and 2 here in Edmonton, yeah. And you're in a public school.
Yes.
And I just want to go back to that place that we were in. Like I remember what it was like to be in February and March of 2020, when all of a sudden everything started to change. And what we were really worried about was how we can. I think that as a larger picture, we were worried how everybody could go to work. And how the children could get schooling in ways that were safe. And there's kind of a whole bunch of conflict there and on and off. What was that experience like for you?
I remember feeling very nervous about the health of my students and my health because we didn't know a lot of information about what was going on, how things were transmitted, the extent of, what COVID was going to do to us. And all of a sudden we were thrown into the situation on Sunday at 6:00 where we're not in school the next day. We didn't even know, we had no idea. It just kind of got thrown at us. So we had one day to switch around. And, I'm not a spring chicken. And to all of a sudden have to go online with, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds and teach them that way. That was like asking me to, learn astronomy overnight. And it was really hard for me because that platform is typically not something that you would use with children to communicate with them. Whereas with junior high and high school, they had a little bit more opportunity to set up like Google Classrooms, where they would have like teacher, parent, child communication back and forth. So in my classroom, thankfully, I had taken a PD on Google Classroom and had one set up already and had some things in it where we use them just like in the classroom. So they would get their Chromebook and we would go into the Google Classroom and we would go into Mathletics, or we would go in and, oh gosh.
That's all right. That's all right.
You know what? I turned everything off on my phone and I missed that one. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So you were talking about how you had already kind of prepared for Google Classroom, but you're dealing with children that are at the age where some parents are actually limiting their tech a lot, right?
Absolutely.
Now all of a sudden the world goes to screens.
And so now we had to kind of figure out how was it we were going to plan our day. So the first time that we left in March, from March to June, looked very different because we were only supposed to be online for an hour to 2 hours a day. And so it was being there to support the students and giving them work and then checking in later. The next year, everything had to be set up and it looked so different. So come last school year, we had to be prepared to go online at the drop of a hat and teach from home, full curriculum, full day. So it was very, very different.
And when you're talking to kids that are that age, or maybe all kids, they're so experiential, right? So all of a sudden, like field trips are out of the question. You can't even get books from the library, right? Because they don't want everybody touching the same things. They did, like, people were literally like covering themselves in hand sanitizer. You remember what that was like, Scott?
Yeah, I do. And I want to just take a moment here, Angie, and thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know of a sector of humanity that faced more challenges with less funding, with worse communication, with absolute hysterical parents trying to rebalance life, and all of that fell on our teachers. So thank you for hanging in there, and thank you for your resilience, and thank you for your love of the child and child development. I think everybody in the world appreciates you guys. And I think it's a kind of a newfound respect. There's a lot we took for granted as human beings pre-COVID, and the cream really rise to the top in the education industry. And so I just want to take a moment just to thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I do know over the last couple of years, I think the way that our profession and our colleagues and our dedication, has been treated has not been very fair. At every turn we've been, made into villains, and that's very hard for us to deal with because we naturally come to this job with empathy and love and compassion, and we genuinely care about our children. Like, they call me mom sometimes, and then I laugh and they're like, oops, sorry, but you really are my day mom. And that's what I am. I'm their day mom and that's their night mom. And I spend more time with them than their parents do. And when you're in that situation, when all of a sudden your school shuts down, you're not just supporting the child, you're supporting that parent and helping that parent get, load into Google Classroom, or talking to the parent who says, I don't know how to teach the sounds of the letters, or what is a digraph or a diphthong. And you have to explain to them. So you have to teach them too. And so you're supporting your colleagues who are worried and scared or sick, and, the kids, and trying to keep them calm and not give them like fear of what was going on, and but to explain it in a way that they understand.
Yeah. Taylor, what do you think about this? You know, the question I think that all the parents out there have and may never get, you know, the right chance to ask for whatever reason, what can we do better? How can we be better in our assistance of our teachers? How can we be better parents? How can we deliver our kids each and every day? What can we be doing better? So what do you think about that question, Taylor?
I think it's a good question. So the thing that parents don't seem to concern themselves with is asking the same question of teachers. Like, what can you do? What can you do more of? Right? They didn't really have much understanding of how it impacted your job. So if you're teaching students and now teaching parents and also teaching IT, because that was the thing that made it all work. I think that there was a lot of people that really didn't consider that. What do you think, Angie? What now that we've gone through this experience, what should more parents know about where they have capacity and where you have limited capacity so that they could bridge the gap?
The IT part of it is really kind of like a school board issue. But I think that the parents really need to be paying attention to the communication from the teachers and actually logging into School Zone, logging into Power School, knowing and logging into Google Classroom, knowing how to do these things in September when we send the communication home, so that should anything happen, because now this has happened, who knows what's coming up in the future. But should something happen, we need to be able to communicate. So they need to know that tech part, right? But I think what I personally would appreciate the most is just patience and understanding on my part, and working, with children to have respect, to listen, to support the teacher. And that's where, because I've been teaching for 25 years, and there's been a shift in thought in regards to our job and our profession. Whereas there's that little cartoon that you sometimes see, up on Facebook, where 20 years ago the parents asked the child why they didn't get good grades, and now they're asking the teacher as if it's the teacher's fault. And it's not. Like, we are a team, right? Like, the first teacher is the parent, the second teacher is me, and the third teacher is my classroom. And we need to work together as a cohesive team and to support each other, not try to tear each other down. And I am very, very blessed where I am with the parents that I have and with the administration that I have tremendous, tremendous support around me. And that really makes me think of teachers who are in those positions who don't have the same things that I do, who aren't in the same boat, or don't have, administration that has your back at every turn.
Well, one of the things that you have in spades is ingenuity. So there were some things that really drastically changed in your classroom. Like, there's books in my house that, like, I would say that one of my favorite books is probably the one with Chris Ferry interviewed the world's best tech entrepreneurs. And there's a fellow named William Hurley that wrote Quantum Computing with him. So it's quantum computing for babies. And it is it's such a brilliant book. But there's these other books that talk about grades 1 and 2, and they talk about people that are growing. And I'm trying to remember what the names were. It was like somebody, the architect, and there was someone else. But they talk about this amazing classroom where everything comes alive. And it sounds like that's the way that you took the pandemic. Now, I heard that you raised over $50,000 and transformed your entire, I guess, education experience.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about where that started? and then take us through?
Quite a few years ago, I had the opportunity to start teaching a Regio program, which is really the focus is on the third teacher. And so, like I said before, the parents are the first, I am the second, my classroom is the third. And so in a Regio classroom, you have an idea of what it is that you want to do that day or what your outcomes are. But it's really up to understanding your students and having that relationship and communication with them to figure out how are you going to get them to learn those outcomes with their interests in mind. And so I spent about 4 years in that environment, and that comes out of Italy. So it's Reggio Emilia. And that really taught me how to approach teaching and incorporate the interests and desires and wonders and that, like what is going on in the world with the kids, and be able to throw out my lesson plans, take their idea and figure out how to fit my part into what they need to do. And so coming into classrooms, when I came into the classroom at my current school, there was literally nothing in my classroom. There were 4 walls. There was nothing. There were no desks or nothing. There are some boxes from the teacher who had retired before that were being passed down. And so at that time, I purchased tables and chairs, so dining room tables and chairs, couches, carpets. I brought in books, and big trees. And so when you walked into my classroom, people thought it was a staff room, and they're like, "Wow, this is a great lounge." What is it? Like, what is going on in here? There's the IKEA Payong chair, like the reclining one, where kids just read, and pillows and blankets and laundry baskets for them to sit in with a towel over or the blanket over top. So it was really very child-centered. And then I ended up having to sell all of my things. And we got some furniture from the district, which was fine, right? Wasn't really my kind of style. And then all of a sudden, COVID hits. And the things that we would normally share in the classroom, because kids touch everything. They share pencils, they share markers, they share glue, they stick their fingers up their nose and down their pants and everywhere. So they're touching everything. They sneeze in their hands. And all of a sudden, we could not do that. And for me, that was the biggest nightmare, was how am I going to teach these kids when we can't share resources? And being in a public school and constantly facing cut after cut after cut, especially with this government, we're losing money every single year. And that's just meeting the basic needs of them, not even talking about the social emotional needs. But all of a sudden, I was like, these books that I have in my classroom, I can't share with the kids. They can't touch them unless they go in a quarantine bucket for 7 days. So they touch a book and it goes in a bucket and you can't touch it for 7 days. And I was like, logistically, I'm thinking to myself, how am I supposed to remember which book is where? And do I have to have 7 buckets? Do I rotate them out? What do I do? And then the library was shut down and our librarian was let go. And we weren't even allowed in that room. So we haven't been in the library for 2 years. So I have all these curious kids in my classroom. And I am a person who can't read a book on a tablet. I need a physical book in my hand. I need to smell the paper. I need to open the book, crack the spine, all of that. And I had a family ask me if I would like some things to help me out, in my classroom. And so I ended up with some grow lights and plants, plant seeds, soil, little diggers, little pollinator things where you take the pollen from one flower and you put it on the other so you can cross-pollinate, because that was part of my science. There was like a grow window so we could look at the roots and the soil. And all of a sudden I had these things that I was going to share, like with my other colleagues who teach the same thing. But it was never a thought that had ever occurred to me to go outside of the school system who can't afford to buy these things. And it was asking, and then a lot of being in the right place at the right time. And, connecting with someone very generous and who said, what do you need? And then it was like one thing after another. So I ended up in my class. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think you're heading in the same direction I wanted to take you, which is like, so I want people to consider that you have a great history in education, that you have all of this background in this. What happens when you let somebody the closest to the work make the decisions? What did you do with that money?
Okay, it's almost like, what didn't I do? It started off really small. And then it got to the point where my administrator just gave up with the asking me about the packages that were arriving at the school because there was a lot. And thankfully, I had a student teacher at the time, and I had to explain to her, this is not typical. This is not normal. And we spent hours like unpacking things. So for me, having that Regio background, hands-on is critical. Children understand things with their hands on things where they can manipulate and turn it. Their brains are learning. They need to see things from a different perspective and from a different, point of view. So we got some reading bins so that each child had a reading bin with their name on it. And there were 25 books purchased and they went in the bin. So introduced the book and the book went in the bin. And then another book was introduced and that went in the bin. And it was just books after books and series and learning, what were the children interested in and looking for, book collections of those. And because I teach grade 1 and 2, I have children that are still learning their letter names and sounds. So I have to respect that and honor that and teach that phonemic awareness. But then I also have children in my class. And that year I had kids in my class that were reading grade 3, grade 4, and some at grade 5. And so I had to make sure that I had from K to 5 in my classroom available for that personal reading time. And that's not even talking about the intervention that I have to do on my own because we don't have an intervention teacher and we have to do it ourselves, in the classroom. So that's a whole other set of tools that I had to purchase. So that was just the books and that's in the book bins. So then there were bins, STEM bins, and putting some things aside so that children can challenge their thinking and look outside the box and see what is out there, because what is out there is more important than what is actually in that box, right? And thankfully, my university professor taught me that, right? He was more interested in things that aren't said and things that you discover on your own and the connections that you make in your mind. So in the STEM bins, whatever science activity we were working on, those items went in there. So for instance, we were working on a magnet unit. So inside there, they had a bag of magnetized poker chips, wand magnets, discs, horseshoe magnets. There were balls. There were all kinds of things that they could discover on their own, whether the magnets work on them or not. And that went in their STEM bin. So if they finished their other paper pencil work, they could go over quietly and pick that up and take it back to their desk and discover on their own.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So there were some things that you were taking care of, like science. You were doing some hydroponics, and then you were also giving some tactile and tactile experiences. Mm-hmm. What else were you limited from? And I'm trying to think of someone who doesn't have your experience, and maybe they can't afford to do all of this, but they could do some of it. Where else did you choose to allocate funds?
There was a lot, like, I'm very interested in social emotional development. And so I allocated quite a lot of funds to developing like the social emotional skills, because that is where I found it to be super difficult with the kids, because they were having a hard time dealing with what was going on. And so I had purchased some books for them about learning about empathy, because they were coming to school with like a lot of emotions inside of them and really not understanding how to express those. They know that they feel something, but they don't know the words for it. And I felt I really had to focus a lot on that. And thankfully, I was selected because of people who know people who know people to pilot a program in Canada. So I was the first Canadian teacher to pilot it. And it's a little expensive, but it's worth it. So if anybody out there wants to, pay for me this year, that'd be great. So it's called the Contentment Foundation. And it is incredible. It's a whole school transformation. And so not just your students, but also like your teachers, and working on mindfulness. How do we calm our bodies? How do we calm our minds? How do we give words to our thoughts? Looking at empathy, community. How do we understand that the people, in our classroom, are part of our family? So when I came on this morning, right, I heard Scott call you brother. So you obviously have that relationship, together. But that's what we need to create, in that classroom. And I find that is really lacking. So having to do a lot of work with them to develop those feelings, inside of them, and how to understand how to take on other perspectives. So that was a huge gift, right? And and then moving into the self-curiosity, portion of it, that really transformed me as a person and gave me understanding into myself and my connection with the students and my influence over them, and how I need to make sure that I lead with my heart, and that even when I get frustrated and I feel like I'm losing my patience, because last year was hard, so hard. I need to give myself grace and take a breath and come back. And it's okay to say to them, I need to come back. I need a break. I'm going to come back and talk to you.
I love what you said. I love what you said to the parents without saying it in such a teacherly way. You said participate and use the tools we've given you. And I hope that our parents, and I'm a parent, Taylor's a parent, we love our children, but that's what we need to hear, is we need to participate, and we are a team.
We are a team.
I love that you said that. And there's tools that the school district has given them. They may not be the best tools. They may not be the fastest running tools. They may not be the most convenient apps. I'm speaking from experience, but they are still the tools we have, and please participate and use the tools we've given you. And then I like what else you said, community funded. And what you did, we didn't ask, we appreciate that as a teacher, but somebody reached out to you, and that started the sort of gift basket rolling. Mm-hmm. And I hope parents are listening to that. There's a lot of distrust. You pay taxes, or you pay into a government enterprise, and that money goes way into these tax coffers, and then there's budgets, and there's community this, community that, and then there's this, that, and it seems like at the bottom, at the end of all of it, our school districts get funded, both countries, United States, Canada, which is just, I don't know, ma'am, forgive me, teacher, if I say ass backwards here in the public forum, but that's just ridiculous. And so what we're finding is that crowdfunding or community funding, crowdsourcing. If that's my child's school right there, give, contribute, use the tools we've given you, participate and contribute. That's what I'm hearing you say to us today. Have I missed anything?
It's not always just participate financially, because we are in a deficit. Our budgets were just released, and so I don't know if you looked in the news, but Edmonton Public, and I don't speak for them, right? I only speak for myself, and my views are all my own. We are looking at around 2,000 children that won't be funded because of this new funding model, that has come in. And the way that funds are allocated, and where there's need, monies follow the greater need. I'm in a very blessed community, a very financially well-off community, and I tell you, these parents at my school, they raise funds like you would not believe for our school. And I have worked in school. I worked in Northwest Territories. And I've worked right across Canada. So like Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba, Northwest Territories, and here. And previously when I was talking to Taylor, I was telling him the one transformation that I had as a teacher was I started teaching high school. And I went to Northwest Territories. And I went from high school, because we're a military family, and you take jobs wherever you can get a job, right to kindergarten. And so, week one, I'm dealing with some kid with puke, and I'm throwing up too and everything. But that experience there in a community that is so culturally different than my own, and my eyes being opened to what these children are dealing with. They don't even have the skills to really understand what's going on. And I've said it so often that to me it almost sounds cliche, but it is so true, so true. Before I went to Northwest Territories, I knew how to teach the curriculum. I knew how to teach what I was told, and I was really good at it. When I left there, I knew how to teach the child, and that made all of the difference. Because teaching is not about what I need to do. It's about what they need me to do. And I need to meet them, each and every child, where they are at, academically, socially, emotionally. And I need to meet the parents where they are at, and because some of them struggle with understanding their children. Their children are their normal. That's normal to them. However their children speaks or behaves, that's normal to them. And helping them to understand and see that it's okay that, when we look at a broad range of children, we're approaching you because we need the help. And so I think that's part of that bigger picture, other than financially, that we need, that we really need that support. Because on Teacher Pay Teacher, which is where we buy our resources, school doesn't buy them, we buy them, right? And, in a typical year, we spend $2,000-$3,000 of our own money on other children, right? And if we want to teach, something with phonemic awareness, or we want to teach phonics or fluency or anything like that, we go on Teacher Pay Teacher, and another teacher who has made something, we buy it from them. And that comes out of our pocket. It doesn't come out of our school's pocket. And because currently right now, I have a curriculum for English language arts, but I don't have the other pieces. I don't have a spelling program. I don't have a phonics program. I don't have this. I have to come up with that. I have to figure out how to do that. Right. So yes, on Teacher Pay Teacher, they can do like a crowdsourcing kind of idea there. Because parents, you can share like a code and parents can contribute, to that. And it's getting at the point where it's a lot, because I have my own family and I have my own children and my own expenses. And I think teachers have been filling in that gap, that financial gap, for so long that it's expected. It's expected of us. And it's really disheartening to hear people say, well, you know, when you signed up, or you knew you knew all of this, like when you signed up for it. Right. And I love kids. I love spoiling kids. I had a snack program last year because you can't teach a hungry child, but I can't do that every single year. Right. And there are so many gaps. And, so as Taylor was saying, when you put teachers who are in the classroom in charge, we see these things and we talk about them and we say, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this. It's not because we are being greedy, and it's not because, these are niceties, to make our lives easier, because yes, of course they do. Right. But it's because the kids need it. Right. They need intervention. They need books. They need hands-on materials. Right. They need experiences outside of the classroom. And
I think that that's wonderful how you were able to facilitate that and to find ways to do that. And one of the programs that you mentioned was the Contentment Foundation. I've actually had the pleasure of emailing back and forth a little bit with Daniel.
really?
Yeah, we'd love to see him here.
I would love to see him there.
And so the idea would be is my wife and I have this mechanism where if we don't agree with each other, we just have to agree on an expert. And what the team there at Contentment Foundation does is they give you like a roadmap to take care of yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And to like check on people, because what you were saying, if I hear you right, is that the children are learning the curriculum at the speed that the teacher is learning the children.
Oh, that's a very good way to put it.
I just find that those relationships, as you describe them, are only enabled when there's enough resources. A few months ago, we had a great guest, Richard Castleberry, and he was from Texas A&M University. And he was describing his job as helping future leaders understand who they are as a leader in every scenario, right? And when you look at yourself as a teacher with your background in some of these hard places, you really know who you are as a mentor, who you are as a day mom in all these scenarios that gave you kind of better equipment to do that, even under this incredible experience that we just went through in COVID. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate you sharing that with us and sharing a little bit of what you think. Now, Scott normally sends me across a few things each week. He sends me some articles that we do a little bit of reactions on, and I'm wondering what you think about some of these things, or if you even have opinions that are happening to us worldwide. One of the things that I know that you had sent over here, Scott, is a little bit about this ongoing between Elon Musk and Twitter. Now, Angie, is this anything that you pay attention to?
I don't, because I try to stay away from the social media as much as possible. I have anxiety and ADHD, and I find that I get sucked into the rabbit hole, and then I get far too emotional. So I kind of stay away from Twitter. It's too much for me.
And as a social media expert, I have to say that there's platforms that are more appropriate than others. Like if we said that LinkedIn is where I work and Facebook might be where I live and Instagram is what I see, those types of things are the ways that we're choosing to give a little bit of our interaction with each other online or share little elements. But you're totally correct in the way that it can be triggering. It can be, it's a total false experience, especially in places where people are limited. But man, there's some new things that are coming, like social audio. Like the way that people talk together, it filters a lot of this stuff out. Like I've been hanging out on this social media platform, Clubhouse, for the last couple of years. It started as an invitation-only platform, and now it's evolved, and we see LinkedIn about to do this LinkedIn audio. And now you think about all the conversations that can be had, because in a place like Twitter, people are sharing other people's thoughts. It's like a whole bunch of retweets and reactions, and there's bots and not bots, and it's tough to differentiate. Whereas when you go on to like social audio, all the experts have to be able to go 3 questions deep, or they just fall flat. Somebody who might have one good quote, they're going to get a follow-up question, and it's going to look like they're doing like the double windmill as their eyes are wide because they can't actually support their own thoughts. So social media is in its like the way it communicates might be like the equivalent of caveman grunting up until now. But it is evolving, and I'm welcoming more of this type of thing. And that's why I'm interested in Elon's move. Because like when you take a look at what Elon does for things, he normally makes them better. Like right now, there's a lot of talk about electric cars being amazing. And when's the last time that you saw children as interested in space as you have now? You've been a teacher for 25 years. Are the kids talking about rocket ships yet?
My kids are quite little. So unless when I'm missing, they usually get like the activity that I'm missing. I might be on a rocket ship or married to Leon Draisaitl. But there is definitely an interest in it because I belong to something called Live Science. And so I get updates, like science updates, and I like to share them with them. And we talk about really interesting new discoveries. And we were talking about one about the space station, and then they seem to grab onto it, and then they want to know more. But their capacity for understanding is limited. But if I present something to them, then they seem to really want to learn, some more.
Well, there's definitely more opportunities to present space than there has been in like the last decades, just based on what's been going on lately. But I'm going to actually position the same thing. Scott, take us through what you see related to Elon and Twitter. What are you catching, or what's your first reaction on this?
Well, first of all, from a business perspective, the graph that you put up before, it showed, there you go. So if you look at that graph, it's just the stock price over a period of time of Twitter. You have to understand that chart right there was reserved for the upper echelon investment banking houses, proprietary information only, until about probably 5 or 6 years or 7 years ago. Charles Schwab then started to put out some diagnostics software tools for individual investors. But that visual graph wasn't available to either you or me who might be investing. And so the tool itself has become very valuable. Now, also on that graph, you have to understand when a gentleman like Elon Musk is going to make an offer for a public company, they're going to hire investment banks that are going to charge sometimes upwards of millions of dollars to do what's called an evaluation. That picture shows you the value of the company, and it's free to everybody. So it's completely disruptive to the whole investment banking methodology and industry. I think that's first to understand. If I'm a shareholder in Twitter, I don't know if $54 a share is a good offer. Look at the graph. It's right there. Oh, yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, he's going to give me 54. It's trading at 41. Sure. And so that's what he's doing with this kind of information out there. What he's doing is he's going to the shareholders directly. So the whole sort of archaic methodology of what we're dealing with in this particular event of the poison pill, which has been adopted, the shareholder rights agreement adapted by the board so that he can't really negotiate until they're ready to go. All that's getting blown up. And talk about spaceship. Is this all getting blown up? There's the fair market value of the company, one chart. Okay, you don't want to talk to me? I'll talk to your people. The irony is he's talking to them through the platform he's trying to buy. All that from one graph. So talk about disruptive innovation. This is a gentleman who's become a major league disruptive innovator during disruptive innovation. So will he be better for Twitter? I think you and I have a personal opinion there, right? And I think if we study it closer and closer, we'll continue to form that same opinion that it probably is a good thing, but disruption is always good when handled correctly. The more that we're seeing here is that no company is safe from an actual market valuation. And if people see value there, they're going to come. And the board's ability to fend off that or to get more or to negotiate for the betterment of the shareholders, well, now the shareholders get to have an opinion in that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was looking at it from this perspective of like, one, how does this compound with things that Elon's already in motion on? So what does Twitter plus Tesla equal? What does Twitter plus SpaceX equal? Well, in most of his business, it just it equals him being able to get a larger voice, which will gather resources for those things. Like when he tweets about SpaceX, just like when he tweets about anything, it will attract a lot of attention to it. But when I started to take a look at like recently what we saw in Ukraine deploying Starlink, I'm like, oh, wait a second, what is Twitter plus Starlink? So Starlink is allowing everybody to have more internet access, but we're not yet understanding how much internet access is that. Is that going to experience like 5G, even in some of the places that have some of the worst technology to use it with? So I noticed that when they made Twitter, it was originally called Odeo. When one of my favorite investors, this guy Mike Maples Jr., when he was talking to Jack Dorsey, and he asked Jack, "What does it do? What does Odeo do?" And Jack was like, "Well, you know, what we can see on cell phones is that you have a limited amount that you can send as a text message. But because cell phones are kind of set up for this, even in the worst cell phone towers, you can get this message through." So that made me start to think that Starlink plus Twitter equals an entire world conversation, especially when you have the ability to use AI in ways that will totally bridge language barriers. So that's one thing that is really interesting to me. And then the second thing is the historic creators of the Western world, they all owned communication centers. Edison had the patent house and the printing press. And that was something that gave him massive advantages. So here's the thing that I might be out on a limb here, but I think that Elon is saying this is where the world is about to have their conversation. And at the same time, Mark Zuckerberg is saying, yeah, in which universe? We have some people that are really challenging the edges of where our minds are exchanging information.
And how?
And I think that this is something that will actually be a bigger disruption than we can see from now. I think we're
agree.
about to have a conversation, and Elon's going to clean it up.
Yeah, and here's how this all connects right back to Angie and her world, because it's all connected. So here's the thing. Angie's biggest constraint is funding. It's having to be in a public sector enterprise vacuum that trickles down funds. And I hate to even say that schools are down versus up of needs of communities. That's sad, but that's how it's viewed. But so her biggest constraint is that public sector engagement, right? Twitter is a public company that Elon is planning on taking private. Now, I want to give just a real quick example. Ski resorts in the United States of America, they're under leases from the United States Forest Service. They don't own the land. Not most of them don't. So if I operate a ski resort and I want to build a lift over there, or I want to build a bike trail over here, I have to get the government's approval to do that because it's their land. I'm on lease. But if I'm a privately owned ski resort, I can build anything I want anywhere I want. Which one do you think is more ecologically paid attention to? The private ones, because it's their mountain, they own it. And so when you eliminate the public engagement of all of what I think Elon sees of limiting what you can say, how you can say it, when you can say it, where you can say it under FCC guideline regulation, internet rule number 1754 is a public, I'm private, I can do whatever I want. I'm going to manage that. I'm going to make it so that it's actually a good tool for humanity. I think he'll do that. But I can remove the shackles. If we can take the shackles off of Angie's budget, we can take the shackles off of those ski resorts to build more bike trails that are family friendly. If we can remove the shackles of public internet rules and regulations and let us decide. And I think that's really what we're seeing here is this gravitation to meeting our moments as humanity the way we should. To shareholders weighing in on share price, to Angie reaching out to the community for direct investment, even though they reached into her first. All around us, we're seeing this massive migration to the public sector can do it better.
Can I tie something in here? I had to have a conversation at the end of last year kind of talk about how this impacted my classroom and what did I see? Did I see any changes? Did it make any difference being able to have these things in my classroom? And the one that I go back to, there's two things that I purchased for math. One was it's like sticks and balls and being able to build a 3D object. And the other one was a 3D object and taking out the net and unfolding it. I've been teaching for 25 years. I have taught junior high. Junior high had no clue that a cylinder is two circles and a rectangle. But all of a sudden, when I had these tools where the kids were like, oh, that's what that is. That's a vertex. That's a side. That's a face. They were able to manipulate and turn it instead of just looking down at paper. They had something in their hand that they could manipulate because children are so kinesthetic. All of a sudden, I had kids who struggled in math. All of a sudden, were getting like 4s. And they were able to sit down and have a conversation with me and explain, like why, the South Pole and the North Pole, in magnets or, sinking and floating and all of these things, and having all of these tools, at our disposal really changed their level of engagement, their level of thinking, their critical thinking. And these are all things that we need. And Scott, you were talking about Elon being a disruptive force. There are a lot of people who tag disruption and disruptive being a negative thing. And it's not. It is absolutely not. I teach my students to be disruptive, right? Ask those questions. Say why. Explain to me why. Because that's what we need to do. I mean, if we just go by the status quo for the rest of our lives, what a boring life we lead, right? And me having this backing was disruptive for my classroom, for my students, for my parents, for me, for, my school. And, like we can't just idly sit by. So I welcome disruption. So.
That's awesome. And that's actually what I wonder. Like, there was another thing that Scott had pulled up here this week, and it was talking about how 86% of employees say they would change jobs if a new company offered them more opportunities for professional development. So when we see, like, you start off with these kids, you start off with them at an early age where, a lot of people are asking them what do they want to be when they grow up. But you've been doing this for so long that you probably see a lot of those outcomes. So you saw a lot of deficits in the classroom. When you talk to some of your adult friends, where do you see deficits in the workplace? Why do you think so many people want to quit their jobs? And like, what do they starve for?
I always relate everything back to me. So I have been in schools where I don't have that connection with my staff and with my administrators. And I'm in a school where I have that connection now. And I have an extraordinary leader as my principal who supports me, who listens to me, who understands, compassion, who works for everyone, who tries to work for me. And I think, when I talk to some of my friends who are in the public sector, and my boyfriend actually is, like, job satisfaction is not just how much you get paid. It's, how are you being developed and challenged as a person? How is your thinking being challenged? Because if you're doing the same thing day after day, it's not exciting. But I think, especially coming through COVID, people are traumatized, right? This was hard for all of us. We need to be able to have empathy and understanding, self-awareness, benefits that are going to help us evolve and give us the opportunity to make those choices for our professional development. And if I had another school that was going to give me a better chance to be a counselor because my background's in grief and trauma. I work with children in programs with helping them through their grief and trauma. That's my other background. I jump at it in a heartbeat. If I was to be able to feel that I am personally, mentally, emotionally, professionally, psychologically fulfilled as a human being, and I'm constantly working towards being my best version of myself, then I'd be gone. And I think that's why people are leaving, because they're not having these opportunities and being stuck inside. They see that there's more to life than the job. It's not just a job. There's more. There's more that they can do, more that they can contribute.
Scott, what do you see there?
Yeah, well, first of all, I hope our listeners are really listening, like really, truly listening, because if you are really listening well to this conversation today, our very best leaders are our teachers, and our teachers are also our best learners. Listen to how Angie learns from everything and how it reshapes how she teaches. She has this, what did I learn? How do I change teaching? What did I learn? How do I change? Oh, pandemic. What did I learn? How did I change teaching? Oh, disruptive children? That's a good thing. That's what I learned. And sometimes as leaders, we have to remember that we're also the best learners, and to consistently be open to learning and consistently be open to changing the way you teach when you meet your moments in life as that teacher, and learn from it and change the way you teach. Learn from it and redesign your classroom, like your living room or your office space. Learn from it and engage with your principal, and make sure that you have somebody that you can lean on and who believes in you, and empower us and we'll empower them. And then you empower us and we'll empower them. And that's the cycle of education right now. Angie's given it to us. Teach it, learn it, teach it, learn it differently, teach it differently, and around we go. And the spiral is up, or the cylinder, two rectangles, or two circles and a rectangle. As I learned today, by the way, which is awesome.
No funding in your childhood school.
That's right. Angie, this has been an honor. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I really like what you said about empowerment, because I think that, when you, whether it's private or public or whatever sector you're in, when you empower a person, when you make them believe in themselves and believe that they have that ability and that strength and that knowledge, and it's okay to struggle, it's okay to ask for direction, it's okay to take, a little bit longer, it's okay to, to not like something, but to learn how to do it. When you empower that person, I think that is really what is like a driving force in children, in business. And if I feel empowered as a teacher, I'm going to do my very best job, and I'm going to give all of my effort and all of my time. And when an employee feels empowered and respected, they're going to want to contribute to their environment as well.
Well, I really appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. And I think that what you were also able to demonstrate is this partnership where communities step forth to help out. We don't need all the funding to go through the government. For honest to goodness, when you take a look at how much you have to put in and what you get out, go around. For the love, go around. Go to your teachers and talk to them about what they need. Because if each of us do that, we're going to end up changing all of these classrooms into the classrooms we want them to be. But if you wait for that to be done at a ballot box, your children are going to be past that, right?
Mm-hmm. But they should be funding they should be funding education to what we need and what the children need. Because when
the only thing that I'm suggesting is that when we say they, it's not the government.
Right.
Don't wait for them. You get 52% of every 52 cent out of every dollar you put in there. If the voters, those people that, or the non-voters, the people that just showed up at schools, we would get what we need faster, and you would put the power in the hands of the people that could do it. Like if we did this effectively all the time, we could literally crowdsource government funding and make the government a tiny little thing that we could put in a box, right? But I appreciate you coming and showing us how we could do that if we did. Like learning from someone with your understanding on what someone would do if they were given more funding, that was something that was a real gift today. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
We're here with Angeie Zuber. She's a public school teacher that does exceptional things. And she was able to transform her classroom even through limitations. Everybody else was talking about what they couldn't do, and Angeie was talking about what was possible. As always, I'm here with Scott Connors, the Chief Change Officer at Crankset Group, helping leaders make great decisions, and a lot of the time, he's talking to people that are the kids inside of those adults that are running the world.
Yeah.
So it's great to connect with a teacher.
No doubt.
And myself, I'm Taylor Hack. I am the marketing strategist at Gravidia, and I pride myself in being a messenger. So we wanted to craft great messages for you here, things that you can take and roll around in your mind for the rest of the week as we share Angie's line of sight. As definitely a leader you are. Thank you again, and everybody have a great day. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.